Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this week's edition of the Sunday Wire. I'm your host, Patrick Henningsen. We're streaming out live on the Alternate Current Radio Network, also at 21stcenturywire.com. We're also streaming out live, hopefully, on Rumble. No technical glitches, hopefully, this week. But we shall see. YouTube, Facebook, Live, X, as well as on BitChute. And we'll be uploading later to Odyssey and other platforms as well. Again, on the audio streams after the show, iTunes, Spotify, all the major audio streams were there, syndicated right across the internet. And ladies and gentlemen, we have a interesting program today, interesting things to discuss. We'll be joined by some of our teammates, hopefully, in the second Overdrive segment. And we'll be talking about, among other things, Donald Trump's recent Arabian odyssey. You probably saw this trip this week. It was regrettable on many different levels. It was beyond cringeworthy. And we'll go through some of the things of most concern in a minute. But also I want to just remind everybody, listen, we are so heavily shadow banned on YouTube, especially on X, on a number of these platforms. We had proof from Grok that we are shadow banned on individual posts, but my whole account at 21 Wire, you can see there in the bottom of the lower third. So we're definitely throttled. So we have very high engagement, a very low visibility. So we need you to like and subscribe, especially on YouTube. YouTube's more or less frozen our account around 15,000 followers for the last 10 years. 10 years. And I found out from the Twitter files when we found my name, our accounts on the shared dashboard for censoring and throttling accounts, which was released during the Twitter files. Some of that information that was public, but I know that same dashboard was used by YouTube and Meta and all these other companies. Meta seems to be loosening up a little bit on the throttling after 10 or 12 years. So that's how long we 21st Century has been prevented from growing. So if you wonder why a lot of our accounts were follower accounts aside from Twitter, but the other ones were frozen at their sort of 2014, 2015 levels. So the only way to break this is we need you to like and subscribe and share the links, especially from YouTube. But on X, of course, if you can repost us, if you can like us as well on these live streams, it helps massively. And I'm currently fighting with X for Elon to stop censoring, to stop shadow banning some of these accounts, especially ours. So hopefully we'll get a little bit of movement on that. But it just shows you how dirty the whole game is. And why would we be throttled? Because on X, okay, it's obvious all of the different censorship regimes that were being implemented by Google, YouTube, Facebook, etc., the old Twitter. It was for many reasons. Some of it was geopolitical. Some of it was Israel. A lot of it during, of course, 2020 to 2022. 2023 was COVID and vaccines. So we unfortunately, we have been out front on all of these issues from day one. On Ukraine in 2014, we're out front on COVID on day one in 2020, out front on the vaccines before they were even released. And then, of course, October 7th, Ukraine, Syria, etc. So we have been, and Trump, Hillary, Trump, Russiagate back in 2015. We were way out front on that, way beyond a lot of independent media outlets. So because being out front is not good if you want to avoid being throttled or censored. It's much safer. It's much better to come in late when you're talking about issues. Unfortunately, I have this bad habit, and so do my colleagues. We have this horrible habit of not waiting 18 months or a year to get our teeth into something controversial. We tend to do it straight away or even before the event has actually happened. And to our detriment, that we have to pay a heavy price for that in terms of subscribers, visibility, views. All of these things are hurt massively because we are getting out front on the story. So what can I do? Unfortunately, my loyalty is to our audience. My loyalty is to our listeners, our readers at 21st Century Wire, the people who have stuck with us from the beginning, from 2010, 29, 2010, 2011, 12. And a lot of those people are still with us. And that and future listeners, future readers and viewers, our loyalty is to our audience. It's to our readership. That it's not to the censors in Silicon Valley. I cannot do what some of these mainline podcasters do, which is either toe the government line or wait till it's safe before you start talking about the issues. Because God forbid, I don't want to lose my $100 million Spotify deal or whatever. Okay. Unfortunately, we don't have those types of numbers. And one of the reasons we don't have some big numbers on a lot of platforms is because we have been throttled, and that's been shown. It's been proven. A number of these sites. So we could go into that later at another time. It's, to me, I'm sick. I'm tired of even having meant to mention it, but we need your help to physically share, like, subscribe, do whatever. Really, really, that's the only way we're going to, through brute force, break through this glass ceiling that's been imposed by the gatekeepers on these corporate platforms, unfortunately. But anyway, we'll do our best and to do that, and we appreciate your help in doing that as well. Now, the subject at hand is Donald Trump's glorious visit to the Middle East. We'll talk about this with Escher, with Ruckus, maybe Basil Valentine later in the Overdrive segment, but we'll kick it off. We'll get started here. So Donald Trump goes to much fanfare to Saudi Arabia, and we tweeted out before. We spoke about this with Freddie. Of course, I warned to say, please, Donald, whatever you do, when you go to Saudi Arabia. And the tweet I can't get massive traction on X at the moment. Elon and his team of censors has frozen my account at 194,000 followers since about the last week of March. That's the last time I remember the number and checked. It's been stuck for almost 2 months on that exact number. So anyway, we tweeted out, it got 150,000 views or something. Should have got 1 million views based on the retweets. We had, 3,500, 4,000 retweets or whatever. Should get more views. If we're other accounts that were more pro Elon, pro Trump, pro Israel, would probably get more traction. But anyway, we're none of those things. But I said, Donald, whatever you do, please don't shake the hand of Abu Muhammad al-Jolani, aka Ahmed al-Sharaa, the so-called president of Syria, the appointed himself president. He's the head of Al-Qaeda in Syria, former deputy of al-Baghdadi at ISIS. Okay, he's a head chopper, a wanted terrorist. There's a U.S. DOJ put a bounty on his head for $10 million for the murder of U.S. soldiers, of Druze minorities, and the list goes on. So while he is there, while Trump's in Saudi Arabia, so is Jolani. So the last thing you want to do is get a photo op shaking hands with a terrorist, not just any terrorist, like the top terrorist. So Trump, talks a big ball game over the years about how we're fighting ISIS and radical jihad, and so are his cabinet people, giving it all this on their sort of war on terror rhetoric. Okay, sounding all neocon. Okay, but Trump just basically jumped the shark in Saudi Arabia. He went there, gave this virtue signaling speech. We played a lot of it on the midweek wire. Freddie Ponton and I went through that pretty well. But just to give a little recap here, we've got this excellent report up on 21stcenturywire.com. This is actually a report about U.S. Special Forces who were training Al-Jolani. Our U.S. Special Forces, Special Ops, Navy SEALs, were training Jolani and Al-Qaeda. Okay, do you guys got that? That was through the CIA. Through these were ex SEALs and U.S. Special Forces, and they shared their information in what's called the SOFREP report. And thank you to Freddie Ponton and our research team that managed to put this together with a nice summary, along with all of the requisite links you would need to prove the case that the U.S. was allied with Al-Qaeda, al-Nusra, in Syria to overthrow Assad. Okay, it's all here. There's Jolani himself, wanted by the U.S. government, $10 million bounty. And here's all the information. Those are the receipts, folks. All the receipts here, including Jihadi John, the famous Jihadi John. This is all a U.S. covert and U.S. allied covert operation. British are involved, French are involved, and the Israelis are deeply involved in this too. This was along with the Qataris and the Saudis, okay, and the Turks and Turkey, all hands on deck to overthrow Assad. Fortunately, it took them a long time. But anyway, this is a report by Brandon Webb, former Navy SEAL, best-selling author. There it is. Those are all the receipts and links, okay? This isn't just Timber Sycamore, Operation Timber Sycamore, which was the weapons trafficking side of this operation, but we're talking about the train and equip and just the general U.S. and Western special forces that were embedded with Al-Qaeda in the field during battles. Okay, just so you understand, that's what we did. Our governments did. Why they pretended to be opposing Al-Qaeda. And here's Donald Trump this week. There he is with Mohammed bin Salman and Al-Jolani. There's Trump. That's the U.S. president platforming a terrorist. Not just any terrorist, the top terrorist. So you guys should be under no illusions as to the significance of this. Okay, this is basically, if you want to understand, this is basically a slap in the face by the Trump administration to every single U.S. serviceman, veteran, wounded in action, family members of anybody injured or killed in the so-called war on terror. Okay, and you know, I don't want to get into a debate about, you know, who's really backed and created and backed Al-Qaeda, because you guys know our views on that, which are factual. I don't want to really talk about 9/11 today, okay? Who did it, how it was done, etc. We'll just go by our own government's narrative that there was a, quote, war on terror, and the U.S. is supposedly against groups like ISIS and Al-Qaeda. So why is the U.S. president, the 47th president, standing there like a clown with Al-Jolani? Someone who has blood on his hands. Trump is shaking blood-soaked hands, American blood on those hands. Okay, this is a slap in the face by the Trump administration to all of those servicemen that were shoved to the front of this bogus war on terror. Okay, as bad as the war on terror was and stupid as it was, at least have the respect not to go and to platform and to big up the guy who was, you know, the top terrorist of the day. He is actually in operational terms much bigger than Osama bin Laden, and also in terms of the groups that he was commanding, the length of time, and the sustained backing he got from our intelligence services and from the Turkish intelligence and Israeli intelligence. Okay, Jolani, aka President Ahmed al-Sharaa. So there's Donald. Okay, there he is, Abu Donald. We're going to call him Abu Donald. Abu Donald, and just to remind people, saved Private Jolani in Idlib in 2018. And Abu Donald bragged about it in 2019 at the time. So that was during Trump's first term. What Trump did was basically prevent the counteroffensive by Assad, the Russians, Iranian special forces, and Hezbollah, and the Syrian Arab Army to retake Idlib and to flush out and deal with the 30,000 plus terrorists that were accumulating in the Idlib province. Al-Qaeda and ISIS occupied the Idlib province of Syria, supported by Turkey, rat lines coming from Turkey. Okay? And this was going to end, and Trump stopped it. He stopped it in multiple ways. And this is when Lindsey Graham went nuts. Remember when they said, oh my gosh, they're going for Idlib? Graham and everybody took to the airwaves, went absolutely ballistic. lobbied Trump heavily. Trump threatened to bomb Damascus and a whole bunch of other targets. And then Erdogan lied and said he's in the U.S. said, "Oh, Turkey's going to deal. Don't worry, Turkey will deal with the terrorists in Idlib." Of course, Turkey lied. Okay, the thief of Aleppo, Erdogan, lied, and he built up the terrorist army, Jolani. Okay, so for whatever reason, and there were back channels with Russia as well. So there's a lot of different things going on. They pulled back on the counteroffensive. Syria should have gone for it, but who knows? They could have. U.S. could have escalated. By this time, Donald Trump had already put boots on the ground in Syria. Donald Trump put boots on the ground in Syria starting in 2017. He started a new war in Syria. Okay, this lie that Trump didn't start any wars in his first term is a lie. Okay, he put U.S. troops on the ground, occupied 25% of Syria for no reason other than to occupy the oil fields, the wheat fields, to steal Syria's energy and agriculture, while the U.S. and the EU were sanctioning and strangling Syria. It was all to try to get regime change on behalf of Israel. So Abu Donald is the best friend of Al-Qaeda. He saved Al-Qaeda, saved Jolani. And here he is thanking Jolani, believe it or not. I mean, honestly, you couldn't make this up. It's regrettable to say the least. But here's Trump himself. This was after the Saudi meeting. First of all, what I just told you about Idlib in 2019, and I played this before, we have to play it again. This is Trump bragging about saving Jolani in 2018. This is him, this was at I think it was a big rally or something in 2019 at the end of his first term. He was boasting that he saved 30,000 terrorists in Idlib. Okay, supposedly Donald Trump against Al-Qaeda and ISIS. Totally not. He is the biggest supporter of any U.S. president in history, has done more to support Al-Qaeda and ISIS during his first term and now his second term than any other U.S. president, I would say. Because he did the one thing, he saved them from being extinct. He did it by occupying northeastern Syria. That saved ISIS, more or less, allowed them to remain, to give the U.S. an excuse to occupy, and he saved Al-Qaeda in Idlib and Jolani. Here he is bragging about it.
And Syria is a mess. And I was responsible, and I hope it stays that way, when I put out on social media a few weeks ago about Idlib province. I said, don't do it. I'll tell you, it happened where I was at a meeting with a lot of supporters, and a woman stood up and she said, there's a province in Syria with 3 million people. Right now, the Iranians, the Russians, and the Syrians are surrounding that province, and they're going to kill my sister, and they're going to kill millions of people in order to get rid of 25,000 or 35,000 terrorists or enemies of theirs, but I think we can call them terrorists. And I said, that's not going to happen. I didn't hear of Idlib province. And I came back to New York, and I picked up the failing New York Times. I hate to admit it was the New York Times, but it was the failing New York Times. And I opened it up, not on the front page, but there was a very big story. I said, wow, that's the same story that the woman told me that I found hard to believe, because how would anyone do that with 3 million people? And it said that they were being surrounded, and they were going in and starting literally the next day, they were going to drop bombs all over the place and perhaps kill millions of people in order to get 35,000 terrorists. And I put out on social media and elsewhere, I gave Mike Pompeo, John Bolton, everybody these orders. Don't let it happen. I said, don't let it happen. That doesn't mean they can't be selective. They can't be, go in and they've got to do what they've got to do with terrorists, assume the terrorists, but don't kill millions of people. And it stopped. You saw that. Nobody's going to give me credit, but that's okay. That's okay, because the people know. I have had more Syrians thank me for that. This was about 4 weeks ago I put that out. I said, they're surrounding a city of 3 million people. They're going to start bombing the city. Don't let it happen. And I meant it, too. I meant it. And millions of people have been saved.
Absolute boulder dash, okay? It's really, I mean, I don't want to call a U.S. president an idiot, okay, or a moron, but the things Donald Trump says are so ridiculous. There is no city in Little Idlib province that has 3 million people in it. Doesn't exist. So, like, I'm not sure. Does he know what he's talking about? I don't think he does. He's just making up stuff to sound and you know, to not to be too tough on Trump, but you know, a lot of his audience are really clueless on stuff like this. Okay, and I've been critical of Republicans that are basically their brain gets wiped for anything outside of U.S. territorial waters. They just can't, you know, they don't know anything. You know, America's funny. Democrats tend to be often way off on domestic issues, but seem to be more cogent on international issues. Republicans seem to be quite on it on a lot of domestic issues, but clueless, absolutely vacant, out to lunch on international issues and geopolitics. This is just a weird inverse equation of U.S. partisan politics historically, anyway. So, what's Trump talking about? That Syria would have killed millions of people in Idlib, the entire Idlib province. Okay, Idlib city, the biggest city he's talking about. I don't know what the population at that time was, but it wasn't you know, anything near what he's talking about. You know, maybe I don't even know if it was a million, quite frankly, at that point. So, but there were 35,000 terrorists there, which he admits. So he's saying, oh, we can't, they're going to go and kill millions of people to get these terrorists. You, but I'm not saying that you can't be selective. And what did the U.S. do when it bombed Mosul? When it went scorched earth in Mosul and Raqqa, supposedly to kill 400 ISIS fighters that were still 400 that were still holding out in Raqqa, I think, and in Mosul, maybe like 2,000. They flattened both of these cities. Mosul's the second biggest city in Iraq. They destroyed it. They destroyed Raqqa. Who knows how many civilians they actually killed? Nobody knows for sure. There's a lot of arguments and controversy over those figures. Obviously, the U.S. doesn't want the real figures to come out. And then Fallujah. What did the U.S. do in Fallujah? It flattened the city to get what they called terrorists, but these were people resisting a U.S. occupation. You see? Oh, but that's okay. When the U.S. does that, absolutely fine. But somehow, magically, Syria, with their small air force, is going to what? Kill millions of people? It's so stupid what he is saying. Or was he afraid that Syria and Russia could do like what Israel's doing right now in Gaza? What's Israel doing in Gaza? Flattened a city with 2.5 million people in it, forcefully displaced 1.5 million or something like that, have killed somewhere around 100,000. If you go by all the excess deaths and the additional ancillary deaths after the fact, not directly from airstrikes, the number is probably around 250,000, 250,000 in 20 months. Israel's managed. Okay. Is that what Donald Trump's afraid of? That something would happen like what Israel's doing to Gaza? And he's not going to lift a finger to stop Israel. Not going to lift his little finger to do anything. Won't even stop Israel or force Israel to allow food and water and aid into Gaza, essential aid, creating a famine, starving the surviving Palestinians, women and children. No compassion there, but some random Syrian woman came up who was with the, quote, Syrian opposition, paid for by the U.S. government, and he makes it into this story like, oh, so many Syrians are thanking me for what I did. Absolutely ridiculous. You see, that was all part of the destabilization and destroying, suffocating, strangling the country of Syria over 14 years and 3 or 4 U.S. administrations, three U.S. administrations to strangle that country in order to get rid of the government, because the government is the only one that hadn't normalized relations or wasn't a major country there that wasn't going to bow to Israel. Egypt had already bowed. Jordan had bowed. Lebanon is a different story. It's a smaller state, and it didn't have a functioning government for a number of years. Still doesn't. So what's Trump talking about? You know, what a hypocrite. He hasn't moved to stop and save the children of Palestine. But somehow he's claiming he saved millions of children in Idlib. Ridiculous. He should be held account for saving Al-Qaeda's terrorist army. And while he is in Saudi Arabia this week, there he is, shaking hands with Jolani. At the moment he's shaking hands, Jolani's bearded thugs shouting radical Islamist battle cries are slaughtering Alawites and Christians in Syria. At the very moment, Trump was platforming a terrorist leader. And MBS is looking on with a big Cheshire cat smile because he knows this is the moment. This is one of the, great humiliations of America. One of the great Donald Trump has, opened Pandora's box once again. Here, it wasn't enough to save this terrorist. Donald Trump is trying to legitimize him. That's why we call him Abu Donald. Saving Private Jolani. Make a great Hollywood blockbuster. Actually, we're probably going to produce a wonderful, beautiful film, Saving Private Jolani. This is his best friend. So, I mean, it's just ridiculous. What a hypocrite. What an absolute hypocrite. So that's why we put on the show page today when we sort of did the graphic for today's program, little tongue in cheek, but we'll put that up on screen in a moment. But that's where it is, folks. There it is. He looks so good looking and such a strong past. He's got a very strong past. Only fanatics. So Donald Trump was fangirling Jolani, okay, on the Air Force One with the press crew on the way to Qatar, I think it was. He was fangirling Jolani, but that wasn't enough. It wasn't enough to fangirl. He had to keep going with it. Here's Trump after he gets back to the U.S. And it was so when he was in the Gulf, he was saying what a good-looking, attractive terrorist Jolani. I mean, it's really cringeworthy, embarrassing. Okay, strong past. It's got you mean his terrorist past? It's not a past. He's still running pogroms in Syria against ethnic minorities, religious minorities, including Christians, which are the only ones Trump cares about anyway, or Republicans pretend to care about, but they actually don't give a toss. If they did, they would have imposed sanctions on Syria or done something. They'd fire cruise missiles at Assad willy-nilly for anything, even a fake chemical weapons attack, which Trump did twice. One of them at the insistence of his daughter Ivanka, apparently saw pictures of the babies. Oh, Daddy, please do something. I think that was after Khan Shahun. Maybe. Or maybe that was Duma in 2018. It was Khan Shahun in 2017, Duma in 2018. Unbelievable. So the fangirling of Jolani didn't stop in the Gulf. Trump kept going. Let's take a look. We'll bring this one up on stage. This is Trump. Well, we'll play this. This is quite something. We'll bring this back to the beginning. So I just can't. It's just beyond me how a U.S. president could engage in this type of silliness. To be quite frank, it's really, really difficult. Let me see. We'll play this. Actually, we've got this clip now. Listen to this. Actually, no, we'll save that for, yeah, we'll save that for later. We'll save that one for later. We don't have that clip just now. We'll try to get it though. But it's just unbelievable. It's unbelievable. Where does it end with this guy? We'll play that clip of Trump during the overdrive segment. When we come back, we'll re-cue it up. But anyway, pretty incredible stuff. So, and again, it didn't end with that. And my last thing I'll say is Trump basically said that there's going to be $11 trillion of investment. $11 trillion of investment from the Gulf for the U.S. They don't have 11 trillion combined in GDP for the next 5 years. These countries, okay, what the hell is he talking about? He just made it up. These are memorandums of understanding. They're not trade deals or anything. I mean, if you weren't bamboozled by the tariff shenanigans, are you going to swallow this one? Oh, I've got 11 trillion in investments. Stupid. He has no such thing. Now, there might be some commitments to buy U.S. high-speed AI chips over a 10-year period or whatever. We're talking about a couple hundred billion from select U.S. companies at some point. Is that what we're dealing with? That's what we're talking about. That's kind of like all it is. So unbelievable. So I really don't know where this guy gets off. It is really just too much. It's really too much. The Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Qatar, U.S. president going to the Gulf, groveling for cash, groveling for money to save the U.S. economy that is tanking. We're 36 trillion in debt. Okay. Running a global empire is expensive. Okay. It's expensive. And all the hype about Doge, Elon saving money. And then Trump wants to raise the U.S. defense budget to 1 trillion. It was already 1.2 trillion before. We broke that down on previous shows. So it was 850 billion on paper. It was 1.2 trillion in real money. Okay, number of sources for that. Just type in $1.2 trillion U.S. defense budget 2024 or 2023. Okay, so Trump says he's raising the official budget to 1 trillion. Then the new budget is going to be 1.4 trillion in real terms, based on previous DoD expenditures. Any idiot, any fool with Google access can work this out. But apparently, no fool in the Trump cabinet or the Trump government can somehow put that together or understands that, or they're just basically selling you a bill of goods, which is exactly what they're doing. So 1 trillion. It's already 1.2. You raise it 150 billion on paper, that's going to put you up to probably 1.35. That's nearly 1.4, which is very close to 1.5 trillion. So anything Doge savings are probably in real terms going to amount to something between 100 and 150 billion. 100 to 150 billion by the end of the year. And I predicted before Trump's term on multiple programs that after the first year in Trump's second term, they will have spent more money than the last year of the Biden administration. So that shows you Doge is a public relations marketing scam for Elon's brand. And for Elon and Palantir and all these guys and Peter Thiel to basically get their technocratic applications in to run government. That's what the layoffs are for. Those contracts are going to the lords of tech. That's what that's all about. It doesn't mean they're going to spend any less. It doesn't mean the U.S. isn't going to be drowning in debt. Here's Trump. Oh, we have to play this before the break. Here's Trump fangirling Al-Jolani. This is embarrassing. This is after gushing over the terrorist leader while he was in the Gulf on Air Force One. Here's Trump when he got back home.
Chance. I met the leader. I met the new leader, and handsome guy, by the way, young, handsome. And I said, you have quite a past. You've got a tough past. But when you think about it, are you going to put a choir boy in that position? I don't think so. It's going to be a little bit tough. It's a tough part of the world. So you're willing to give him a shot? The word they say, it's a nasty neighborhood. It's a rough neighborhood. Yeah. And I thought he was really, I thought he was terrific. He was so thankful about the sanctions because he knew he's not going to be able to bust through. So maybe it'll be a turn there. We'll see. I think he has a real chance. He's a strong guy.
Just completely clueless. Why were the sanctions on Syria before that? Why? Why were they on the Assad government? For no reason at all. Just to strangle the country. And they say, Assad was killing his own people. Assad was killing terrorists that were being sent into Syria by the U.S., by the CIA, through the operation we just showed you. We'll put it up on screen once again. So they sent in terrorists trained by the U.S., people like Al-Jolani, who recruited all these crazed fanatics, these bearded killers. There's the receipts. Just one example in the SOFREP report, which is up at 21stcenturywire.com. Okay, so they sanctioned Assad for fighting these maniacs. Does that make sense? Because that's what happened. But Al-Jolani, this guy that Trump is gushing over here, he is killing his own people now as we speak. He is a terrorist with a terrorist government supporting foreign terrorists running around Syria, killing people. That's what they supposedly sanctioned Assad for supporting the Palestinian political wings and groups that were based in Syria because they couldn't go back to Palestine. So the U.S. sanctioned him for that for like the last 20 years. And now the U.S. put a terrorist in Syria and they're lifting sanctions. Abu Donald is the best friend of Al-Qaeda ever in history. Full stop, period. Nobody close. That's the reality of it. And I'm sorry if that hurts the feelings of MAGA people or diehard Trump supporters, but you guys got to wake up and take the scales off your eyes at this point, because things are not going to get better from here on out. Okay, things could get progressively worse. And the worst part about this, and we'll go to break in a moment. I've gone over where we wanted to break a few minutes ago. Sorry about the timing. Look, Trump sent Steve Witkoff. Listen closely. Trump sent Steve Witkoff and his team to negotiate with Hamas to release this Eden Alexander, this quote, Israeli American. You notice if they suddenly become American if they have an American passport, but if they don't, they're Israeli or depending. While they're fighting for the IDF, they're Israelis, but as soon as they're taken captive, they're American. Okay, just saying. So Witkoff promised the Palestinians that they would let in aid if they released this so-called hostage, who was a serviceman. He's a POW, basically. Israel's calling it a war, so anybody who's IDF or reservist is a POW. If Israel's going to call it a war with Hamas, then they're POWs, not hostages. Basic. Okay. So Witkoff, the great negotiator, pulled a bait and switch on the Palestinians. He got the soldier released, and then he didn't let, U.S. did nothing to put any pressure on Israel to allow food, water, and medical supplies in. So Witkoff lied to the Palestinian side, promised them something he had no ability to deliver. In good faith, the Palestinians released this person. Trump got a media win, got a big W. Witkoff got a big W. Even Netanyahu took a victory lap for it and thanked Trump. But they had to lie to get that at the expense of Palestinian civilians being starved, bombed, and killed, slaughtered as we speak. Israel has announced total warfare against the Palestinians in Gaza. Total warfare. They want to do the final phase of the ethnic cleansing of Gaza and the genocide of the native Palestinian population in broad daylight. That's what's happening. So why would anybody trust the United States after pulling a stunt like they did this week? So the whole show in Arabia, all of this carry on was a distraction to allow Netanyahu to carry on with the genocide. And it worked. Hardly anybody's pushing back on Netanyahu. I mean, the press are beginning to push back. God bless them after 20 months. Mainstream media. Oh, thank you. The cavalry has finally arrived. But for the last 20 months, it was like waiting for Godot. Waiting for Godot. The only person who arrived to save the Palestinians were the Iranians, Hezbollah, and the Yemenis. They're the only people that did anything to try to stop Israel, to try to pull the IDF away from slaughtering tens of thousands, will end up being hundreds of thousands, innocent Palestinian civilians, the native Palestinian population, including Christians, Muslims, everybody, women and children, etc. That's the truth. Okay, you may not like it, depending on what politics you're loyal to, whether you're a Zionist or a Christian Zionist or a MAGA Republican. You may not like the truth, but it's still the truth. You may not like it, it's still the truth. There's nothing that I've told you just now that cannot be fact-checked. If we had the staff, I'd put links for everything in the show notes, but we don't have the resources. You can go rewind and go look it up. Just use a search engine or go to 21stcenturywire.com. Read the SOFA report, which we showed you before. Listen, we're going to go to break here. Again, I'm your host, Patrick Henningsen. This is the Sunday Wire, episode 547 of this weekly omnibus news and analysis radio program. And we'll also hit the comments as well in the Overdrive segment. That should be very, very interesting, especially after last week. Look, we'll take a break right now. And wow, Peyote for president. I have to play this track again because it's such a banger. We'll see you guys in a few minutes.